The moment Elena and Liam stepped into the room, they didn't even wait for the lawyer to speak. "She'll get nothing. Dad hated her." That's what her sister Sophia said. No greeting, no eye contact. Just that sharp, cutting sentence, loud enough for everyone to hear, like she wanted it to echo. Elena felt the words land in her chest like a punch. Her grip on her son Liam's hand tightened. His small fingers curled back around hers, warm and trembling. She forced a smile down at him, thin and shaky. But he knew. He always knew. She hadn't even taken a seat yet, but the message was clear. She wasn't welcome. She wasn't family. She was just a loose end, and they were here to snip clean. Sophia sat at the head of the table, perfectly poised in a gray pantsuit. Her dark hair pulled into the tight bun she always wore when she wanted to feel superior. Her lipstick was sharp red, classic Sophia, war paint for a battle Elena didn't even know she'd walked into. Then came the voice she dreaded even more. Her uncle Victor, her father's older brother, let out a dry laugh. He leaned back in his chair, fingers laced behind his head, that smug smirk of his spreading like oil across his face. "Even her kid knows she's worthless," Victor muttered, nodding toward Liam like he wasn't even human. Liam lowered his eyes to the floor. Elena's heart cracked a little deeper. Around the room, a few heads nodded cousins, old neighbors, family friends she hadn't seen in years. People who had long since picked sides, and she wasn't on theirs. She swallowed hard. Her throat felt like sandpaper. The air was stale with the smell of dust, leather chairs, and whatever overly sweet perfume Sophia had bathed in. She could feel her pulse in her ears, loud, hot, humiliating. She led Liam to the farthest chair at the end of the long mahogany table, away from the pack. The chair creaked when she sat. Liam climbed up beside her, his legs swinging above the floor, his hands folded in his lap like he was trying to disappear. Sophia turned her head slowly toward her. When their eyes met, she smiled, but there was no warmth in it, just pity soaked in poison. "You know this is pointless, right?" Sophia said, her voice smooth and cold. "Dad rewrote the will, cut you out completely, said you were dead to him." Elena didn't respond. She couldn't. Her tongue sat heavy in her mouth, useless. She just nodded slightly like she understood. But inside she thought, why did I even come? Maybe there'd be something. A note, a line, a sign he remembered her, something to make it all make sense. Instead, she was back in the one place she promised herself she'd never return to, surrounded by people who made it clear they had already buried her long before they buried him. And just as she was about to stand and leave, before they started carving up the estate like vultures, the door creaked open. Mr. Carter, her father's lawyer, entered the room, clutching a thick folder beneath his arm. He looked neatly pressed, tired eyes, and a face that gave nothing away. The room fell silent. Everyone sat up a little straighter. This was it. She braced herself for humiliation. She came expecting nothing, and she believed she'd leave with exactly that. Or so she thought. Because what no one in that room knew, not Sophia, not Victor, not even her, was that her son Liam had brought something with him. And with one sentence, he would unravel everything they thought they knew. "You forgot the video," Liam said. Elena and Liam stepped foot in a room like this with her family. She packed up a life they said she didn't deserve, took Liam, and left without looking back. Not because she wanted to, but because she had to. Because every conversation with her father, Henry, ended in silence or shouting. Because every family gathering felt like walking barefoot across glass while smiling for the camera. But now she was back. Back in a room that still smelled like cigar smoke and old anger. The irony, she didn't even know she was invited to the will reading. The envelope showed up after the funeral. No note, just the date, time, and address. Das was in Mr. Carter's formal script. For a moment, she wondered if it was a mistake. Maybe they meant to send it to someone else. Or maybe it was just a cruel, final joke. But Liam wanted to go. He looked at her with those wide, soft eyes, his voice quiet, but certain. "We should go, Mom," he said. "Maybe there's something you need to hear." She didn't know how a kid could carry that kind of wisdom, but he did. Sometimes she thought he saw the world in ways most adults never learn to. So they came. She wore the plain black dress she hadn't touched since her mother's funeral, and he wore a little button-up that he picked himself. She braided his hair that morning with trembling hands, and he told her she looked beautiful, He didn't know she had barely slept, that she was terrified to face the people who had treated her like a ghost. She knew what they thought of her. Sophia, the perfect daughter. She stayed, she helped. She took care of Dad. She made sure everyone saw her doing it too. She told the story so many times it became gospel. Elena abandoned the family. Elena couldn't handle real life. Elena ran away. They never asked why she left. They didn't know or didn't care that Henry stopped speaking to her after she refused to stay in a marriage that was tearing her apart. That when she showed up on his porch with Liam in a suitcase, he shut the door without saying a word. That the one person who was supposed to protect her from the world had become another wall she had to break through. Victor didn't help. He was Henry's echo, always repeating the same bitter phrases. Family doesn't quit. Blood is loyalty. Don't come back crying. And Sophia, she soaked it all up and turned it into a script she could weaponize. So Elena stopped trying. She had built a quiet life for Liam and herself. They didn't have much, but they had peace, love, and laughter. Still, a small part of her held on to the tiniest, most fragile hope that maybe, in the end, her father had seen something, regretted something, or left something behind. Maybe that was why she opened the envelope, why she showed up. But now, sitting in that room, surrounded by hard eyes and smug smiles, she felt foolish for hoping. Liam hadn't said a word since they sat down. He sat straight, hands in his lap, eyes scanning the room like he was studying each face. His calm unsettled her a little, like he was waiting for something. Then Mr. Carter cleared his throat and opened the folder. She leaned back in her chair and whispered to herself, "Just get through this. Don't let them see you break." But Liam, he was sitting on something bigger than grief. And before this was over, he would prove that he was the only one in the room truly listening to her father betray. Carter cleared his throat again, the way lawyers do when they want everyone's attention without directly asking for it. He adjusted his glasses, flipped open the folder, and began reading the will like it was just another Tuesday. She barely heard the first few lines generic legal stuff, estate definitions, executor declarations. Her mind was spinning, not with what he was saying, but with what she knew was coming. He wouldn't say her name. She was sure of it. Still, every time he paused to turn a page, she held her breath, like maybe, just maybe, the next words would be different. Maybe he'd surprise her. But no, it was all the usual suspects. To my daughter Sophia, I leave the primary residence and all its contents. Her sister's face didn't move, but she could feel her satisfaction in the air, like perfume floating across the table. Sophia glanced sideways at her husband, who gave her a smug little nod, like they were already planning renovations. To my brother Victor, the lake property and all remaining shares in the family business. Victor leaned further back in his chair, arms folded, chin high, like a king surveying his newly acquired kingdom. She watched him slide a cigar between his teeth and bite down gently, like he had already won something. To Ethan, my nephew, the vintage car collection. Ethan, the cousin who once locked her out of her own room just to watch her cry. That Ethan. She bit the inside of her cheek to keep her face from cracking. She could feel the tears gathering behind her eyes, hot and sharp, but she didn't let them fall. Still, no mention of her, not even a footnote. Then came the line she had been dreading. And as previously declared, my daughter Elena will not receive a portion of this estate. There it was, simple, final, like a closing door. She felt like she had been punched in the chest. Liam's fingers slipped into hers under the table. She hadn't even realized her hands were clenched tight in her lap. His touch brought her back, anchored her before she drifted too far. She could feel her heartbeat behind her eyes. Her skin burned. Then came the whispers, low but intentional. Sophia let out the softest scoff. "Told you," she muttered to her husband. Victor shook his head like it was all so predictable. "Takes a certain kind of person to walk away from her own father," he said, louder than necessary. The others, the cousins, the so-called family friends, didn't say much, but their silence was just as loud. She stared down at the wood grain on the table. The lines twisted and spiraled, almost hypnotic. It was easier to look at that than at their faces. She could hear her own voice inside her head, flat and hollow. Why did she come? Why did she think he'd remember her? But then Liam moved. He let go of her hand and sat up straighter. She felt the shift before she saw it. His voice cut through the tension like a tiny blade, soft but unshakable. "You forgot the video he recorded." The room froze. Sophia blinked. Victor turned. Mr. Carter paused, his pen still hovering over the page. She turned to Liam, confusion flooding her mind. "What video?" she asked, barely above a whisper, but he wasn't looking at her. He was looking straight ahead, steady, certain. He reached into his backpack and pulled out a small white envelope, slightly crumpled, but sealed tight. Her name was written on the front, but underneath it, in unmistakable handwriting, it read, "For the lawyer only, if it gets ugly." She didn't understand it yet, but Liam did, and suddenly, for the first time all day, she felt the balance in the room shift. She stared at the envelope in her son's hands like it was radioactive. He held it so calmly, like it wasn't the most dangerous object in the room, but her eyes were locked on the handwriting across the front. Sharp, all capital letters, unmistakable. Her father's. "For the lawyer only, if it gets ugly." Well, it had gotten ugly. She could barely find her voice. "Liam, where did you get that?" He looked up at her, his expression soft but steady. "Grandpa gave it to me. He told me to keep it safe." Her heart stuttered. "He gave it to you?" He nodded. "The day we visited him, just me and him. You were at work." Elena blinked hard, trying to pull the memory into focus. She remembered that day. Liam had asked if he could go with their neighbor to drop off something at her father's house. She had no idea they even spoke. Now Mr. Carter reached across the table. "May I?" he asked gently. Liam handed the envelope over without hesitation. The entire room leaned in. Sophia was squinting, like she couldn't make sense of it. Victor shifted in his seat, no longer slouched. For once, nobody had anything to say. The envelope made a quiet, tearing sound as Mr. Carter opened it. Inside was a USB drive, small, black, ordinary, but her pulse kicked like it was a grenade. Mr. Carter furrowed his brow and pulled a note from the envelope too. Another page in her father's handwriting. His eyes scanned it, and for the first time since he had walked into the room, his composure cracked just slightly, but Elena saw it. He didn't speak right away. He just nodded slowly, like something unspoken had been confirmed. "Everyone, Mr. Carter said, his voice quieter now. "There is a video message from Henry Garcia, recorded before the final version of this will. It was sealed with instructions to be played only if the situation became contentious." His eyes flicked to Sophia, then to Victor. They both shifted in their chairs. Sophia scoffed. "This is ridiculous." Victor leaned forward, his voice harder now. "We don't even know what's on that thing. Could be fake." Mr. Carter raised a hand. "It's time-stamped, authenticated. I recognize the handwriting and the signature, and per his instructions, I'm legally bound to play it." He plugged the USB into a sleek black laptop sitting on the desk beside him. The screen flickered to life, the logo dissolving into a black frame with a single word, "Play." The air in the room changed. No one spoke. No one moved. Elena could feel her heartbeat in her fingertips. She gripped the arms of her chair like they might keep her from floating off into some other world. Her breathing was shallow, shaky. Why would her father leave a video? Why did Liam? What could he possibly want to say now after everything? Liam didn't look nervous. He just sat still, eyes on the screen, like he already knew what was coming. Sophia looked pale now. Her lips were pressed into a tight line. Victor had stopped chewing his cigar. Elena wanted to run. She wanted to cry. She wanted to scream. But mostly, she wanted to know. Mr. Carter hit the space bar. The screen went black for half a second, then flickered. Suddenly, there he was. Her father, older, thinner, sitting at his desk, wearing that navy sweater she had bought him for his last birthday, the one she didn't even know he'd ever worn. His hands were folded. His expression wasn't cold, just tired. He looked straight into the camera. Then he started to speak. She didn't breathe. Not when the screen lit up. Not when she saw his face. Not when she heard the first two words leave his mouth. "Hi, Elena." He looked older than she remembered. His skin had thinned. His once proud posture had softened, but it was still her father, Henry Garcia, sitting at that worn oak desk with the antique globe behind him, just like when they were kids. Only this time, his expression wasn't stern or distant. It was human. "If you're watching this," he continued, "I'm gone, and I'm guessing things didn't go well at the reading." His hands were clasped in front of him, fingers twitching slightly, a small, nervous habit. "I didn't expect peace between you and the family. I know what they think of you. Hell, I know what I said about you." He looked down, swallowed, and I was wrong. Elena's breath caught in her throat. Her nails dug into the armrest of the chair. Liam glanced up at her, but she couldn't look away. I believed what Sophia told me. I believed Victor. I believed you left because you didn't care. I didn't ask questions. I didn't listen to you. Not once. You tried, and I shut the door in your face. On you and Liam. She heard Sophia shift in her chair, sharp and uncomfortable. She didn't look. She couldn't. Her father's voice cracked, just barely. I thought being strong meant being proud, that if you walked away, it was betrayal. But strength is showing up. It's protecting your child. And you did that. You did what I couldn't. His eyes glistened, her own vision blurred. I met Liam one day when he stopped by. Just the two of us. That kid, he didn't say much. But when I asked him about you, he just said, Mayesk, my mom is the safest place in the world. Her hand flew to her mouth. I lost you, Elena. I see that now. I lost my daughter because I couldn't stop being right long enough to love you the way you needed. But I won't let my last act be pushing you away again. He cleared his throat and looked straight into the camera, steady. So I changed the will. There was a collective gasp in the room. Someone's chair creaked, Victor's maybe. Sophia muttered something under her breath, but Elena couldn't hear it. She could barely hear anything but the sound of her father's voice. I've left the house to you and Liam, the savings, the retirement fund, it's yours. And a college trust for Liam. I know it doesn't fix what I broke, but I want you to have the peace I couldn't give you when I was alive. He paused, then leaned slightly closer to the camera. And if they're angry, let them be angry. You earned this. You lived through all of it and never stopped being a mother. That's more than I ever managed. A lump formed in her throat, so big she could barely breathe. I'm proud of you, and I love you, Elena. Always did. I just didn't know how to show it. And then, just before the video faded to black, he added quietly, take care of my grandson. Tell him thank you. The screen went dark. No music, no transition, just silence. Pure, still, holy silence. Someone sniffed, but she didn't move. She sat there, hand over her mouth, tears slipping down her cheeks, feeling like something she didn't even know she was carrying had finally been lifted. After all the years of noise, of blame, of exile, of silence, he heard her. He finally heard her. And in the quiet that followed, no one could take that away. No one spoke when the screen went black. Not Sophia, not Victor, not the cousins or the family friends who once smiled politely while ignoring the weight she carried. Even Mr. Carter sat still, his hand frozen above the mouse, as if stopping the video had also stopped time. And maybe, in a way, it had. She didn't know how long she sat there. Her hand was still over her mouth. Her cheeks were wet, but she hadn't noticed the tears falling until she felt Liam's hand slip into hers again. He wasn't crying. He just looked up at her with that small, knowing smile, like he'd been waiting the whole time for the truth to finally find a voice. She leaned down and kissed the top of his head. Her heart ached with something too big for words: love, relief, grief, all knotted together. Across the room, Sophia stood up abruptly. Her chair screeched against the floor. She picked up her bag with shaking hands and walked out without a word. Her husband trailed behind, red in the face, mumbling something under his breath. Victor stayed seated longer, jaw clenched, eyes fixed on nothing. When he finally stood, he looked at Mr. Carter like he wanted to argue, but even he knew there was nothing to fight. Henry had spoken. His truth was now unignorable. The others followed, one by one. Some couldn't meet her eyes. A few offered quiet nods, pity, or maybe respect. She couldn't tell. Soon, it was just the three of them left. Mr. Carter gently closed the folder and cleared his throat. There will be some paperwork, he said, his voice softer than before, but everything's in order. She nodded. She didn't know what to say. What could she say? He gave a small smile, genuine, and left them alone in the room. The silence that followed wasn't the kind she had grown used to. This silence was peaceful, whole, like something had finally settled into place. She looked at Liam, still holding her hand, still looking at her like she was the strongest person in the world. And maybe, in his eyes, she was. But he was the one who had saved her, who had carried that envelope like it was just a piece of paper, not the truth that would rewrite everything. They stayed a little longer. She didn't know why. Maybe she just needed time to breathe. Maybe she wanted to sit in the one room where, for the first time, She felt like she belonged. She kept hearing Henry's voice in her head. I'm proud of you. Those 3 words she thought she'd never hear, words she needed more than she ever admitted. She thought about everything she had carried years of silence, of being blamed, of being erased. And now she wasn't erased. She was seen, heard, remembered. She looked at Liam again. Thank you, she whispered. He tilted his head. For what? For being braver than me, she said. For holding on to something that mattered. He smiled. I just wanted you to hear him. And she had. Not just in the video, but in the shift that came after. In the peace that filled the room once everyone else had left. That's the thing about truth. It doesn't always come when you want it, but when it does, it changes everything. So no, she didn't walk out of that room broken. She walked out holding her son's hand, with her father's words still echoing in her chest. She walked out whole, and that silence finally meant